have 2 questions for you this morning, so you could decide to jot them down, the responses down in the little booklet you were given, or respond to them at the top of your head. So the first question is, how often do you connect to the internet? And the second question is, what would you do without it? Because a study done by Deloitte says of the world's 7 billion population, only 2.7 have access to the internet, while a clear majority of 4.3 remain unconnected, live in developing countries. I'm here to tell you that many of those unconnected are here in South Africa. I'd like to share my story, which highlights my relationship with the internet, and particularly why I think universal internet access is a right of every South African. See, I'm the eldest of 5, and I grew up with immense pressure to make something of my life, so my younger siblings would have someone to emulate closely. So after I completed my undergrad and honors degree, I got an opportunity of a lifetime to go and pursue my master's degree in France. Pretty cool, huh? A 20-year-old from a township gets awarded a scholarship. Great PR story. But my excitement was short-lived because people whom I consider very close to me urged me not to go because I would fail, because the standard was too high, and because I did not speak French, obviously. So I turned to my mentor, my grandmother, the woman who gave me her life savings for me to enroll for my first year at university. And my grandmother urged me to go. So now, the catch that came with my scholarship award was that I would have to apply for a university in France on my own, an entire university. But I did not know anyone in France. I'd never left the country. How do I do this? So I turned into one thing half of us in this room cannot go without, and that is the internet. I Googled all prestigious universities in France, and I struggled. I struggled because how would I know my email application was received? Would I get admitted? What if they expected me to come and bring in supporting documentation in person? You see, these are all questions a young person from a disadvantaged background struggles with. But needless to say, I eventually got accepted by the university in the south of France for a master's bilingual program. And shortly before my departure, my dear grandmother was worried about how we were going to keep in contact for the next 18 months. So I had a friend of mine download Skype, and once I landed, I sent him an inbox on Facebook and had him quickly rush to my house so my grandmother could Skype with me. You see, this moment right here introduced the internet to my grandmother. It introduced the internet to my family and my closest friends. Today, my grandmother is not a digital native yet. I'm working on it. But she's very much digitally informed. My grandmother believes Google has the answers to everything. We call her Gogo Google. Just the other day, she rushed to my room, right? And she says, I need to create a Twitter account for her. You see, my grandmother understands that when you tweet, you get your opinion out there and you keep up with current affairs. And maybe your tweet might get liked or even retweeted, and maybe you can trend. But back to my story. The internet was to be a very important tool for me to communicate with friends, family, but also to prep for my classes. It was also an important tool for me to conduct interviews for my master's thesis that I would later defend. But may I highlight that I was out of my comfort zone. Not only did I find myself in a foreign country, but also it was expected that I would compete with my European counterparts with this resource that I barely grew up with, and compete very well. Needless to say, I graduated with my master's degree in honors and got an A in French. That's me over there. The reason I'm telling you my story is that I want us for a moment to imagine what internet access is like for a 12-year-old boy living in Atteridgeville who lives in a shack, sleeps on the floor, where both of his parents are unemployed and survive on his and his siblings' social grant. In 2013, Alan Nod Craig Jr. founded Project Isizwe, and I later joined the organization earlier this year as their youngest CEO. I'm 26. Project Isizwe is a non-profit organization that facilitates as well as advocates for free internet access within a walking distance in low-income communities. At Project Isizwe, we believe internet access should be a basic good and a human right, akin to water and electricity. Thus far, Project Isizwe has rolled out 1,076 hotspots countrywide. Our flagship project is in the city of Tshwane, which started in 2013. And we've connected over 300,000 unique users per day that come into our network and have over 1 million unique users on a quarterly basis. We give away 500 megs per data per device. At Project Isizwe, our argument is basic. We believe internet access should be a basic right that is 100% subsidized by the state. Pretty brave, huh? Here's why. Because the Bill of Rights, our cornerstone of our democracy, right, states that the Bill of Rights should protect, respect, and promote the rights of every South African. So to Section 27B of the Bill of Rights say we have a right to water and food, right? It also says that we have a right to social security should we be unable to take care of ourselves. Furthermore, the Bill of Rights states that the state has the responsibility to take legislative and other measures to make sure that these rights are realized, correct? Equally so, Section 16 of the Bill of Rights says we have the right to freedom of expression. And this freedom of expression includes the freedom to receive, impart, and share ideas, freedom of artistic creativity, freedom of academic freedom, and scientific research. Clearly, internet access should be a basic right, right? But I want you to think of these hotspots that Project Isizwe deploys in different municipalities as communal taps. We're not saying these hotspots should be your basic rights. We're saying the tool that allows you to access information should be your basic service. And therefore, this is the way the municipality gets to help you realize your Bill of Rights. People in low-income communities need internet access because every corporate now has moved to e-application, and every municipality has moved to e-governance. And even SARS is nudging people to move towards e-filing. At Project Isizwe, we conduct quarterly reports on our impact surveys. We do this to get empirical evidence of what internet access can do in low-income communities, and also to support our argument why it should be municipal subsidized. So this is a graph that we did. So it shows here of 24% of people have claimed that they've saved money by using our Wi-Fi networks. And less than 23% use it for education and schooling. And 8% use it for email. We're still yet to get people digitally native like my grandmother. If this does not get you thinking, a study done by the World Bank says for every 10% of broadband penetration, there's a 1.3% growth in a country's GDP like South Africa. So if we think of 1% of GDP equals to 7,000 jobs, that's 700,000 jobs waiting to be created. You see, the return on these investments are beneficial to the state, which goes back to my argument. It has to be subsidized by the state. Because people in low-income communities cannot afford data, and the cost of data is a barrier for them to access jobs, to connect to the world, and efficiently contribute to our national GDP. What can you do here today, personally? I urged you to get involved in the discussion about why the digital divide in the country is so entrenched. Find out how other organizations like Project Isizwe and others are working to bridge the divide. Perhaps you can give your domestic worker, share your Wi-Fi password with your domestic worker, whatever term you're comfortable calling her. Do nearby schools in your area struggle to connect to internet or digital teaching skills? Perhaps you can help there. Carry a dongle in your pocket, on your bag, and help your neighbor who's trying to apply to their first year of university. See, it's challenging, but we can all do something individually. Remember that little boy in Atteridgeville who lives in a shack? Imagine now that he's got internet access through our Wi-Fi project, Isizwe. He not only grows up to be a digital native, but he has access to some of the brightest minds and the digital platform. He not only grows up to be an amazing academic and professional, but also an amazing person in a world that is fast becoming digital. What are we doing in the long term? Well, Project Isizwe is working very hard with other organizations. We need to come to the table and work with organizations such as ICASA, DTPS, and USASA on what the way forward should be. I think the government should focus its energy on implementing efficient policies that will roll out internet access not only in low-income communities, but in rural areas as well. So the conversation shouldn't be about bringing the cost of data down. The conversation should be on the sustainability and the scalability of these Wi-Fi projects. So this has been my story on bridging the digital divide, one township at a time, and being the voice for the voiceless. Thank you.